The auction yard was alive with the chatter of wealthy buyers, their sharp eyes scanning the horses being let out one by one. These were people who knew what they wanted: strong, healthy animals bred for racing, breeding, or prestige. But when the next horse was brought forward, the energy shifted. Whispers passed through the crowd. Some turned away, uninterested. Others chuckled under their breath. The horse was a mess. A deep gash ran along its side, half-healed but still raw. Its ribs pressed against thin skin, its coat dull and lifeless. When it moved, there was hesitation in its step, like it had once been something great but had long since lost the fight. The auctioneer barely tried to sell it. He rattled off its pedigree, but the usual enthusiasm was gone. No one cared about bloodlines when the horse standing before them looked half-broken. Bidding started, but no hands went up. The price dropped lower and lower, yet the millionaires and ranch owners remained silent. They weren't here for a charity case. They were here for winners. The auctioneer sighed, ready to move on, when a voice finally spoke up from the back. It wasn't a powerful rancher or a wealthy businessman. It was a farmer, just a simple man who had no business competing with the elite. The crowd turned to look at him, some with amusement, others with mild curiosity. What could he possibly want with a horse like this? He wasn't dressed in fine boots or tailored coats. His hands were rough, his clothes worn from years of hard work. He didn't belong in this world of easy money and high-stakes deals. And yet, he had just placed a bid. No one challenged him. Why would they? The horse was worthless to them. The auctioneer slammed the gavel down, barely hiding his relief at getting rid of it. Just like that, the deal was done. The farmer now owned an animal no one else wanted. As he approached the horse, he saw the pain in its eyes, years of mistreatment, exhaustion, and maybe even betrayal. The animal flinched slightly when he reached out, as if expecting another cruel hand. But the farmer didn't move fast or force his touch. He just stood there, letting the horse see that, for once, no harm was coming. He didn't know what he had just bought. He didn't know that buried beneath the scars and broken spirit was something extraordinary. All he knew was that he couldn't leave it behind, not like that. Loading the horse onto his old trailer, he ignored the quiet murmurs from the crowd, the snickers of men who had turned their backs on what they thought was a lost cause. Let them laugh. He wasn't in this for their approval. He had made his choice. As he drove away from the auction yard, dust kicking up behind his truck, the horse stood silent in the trailer. Weak, broken, unwanted. But something flickered in its dark eyes, something no one else had noticed. Not yet. The drive home was long, the old truck rattling over dirt roads as the sun dipped lower in the sky. The farmer kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting the horse to collapse in the trailer. It hadn't made a sound since they left the auction. No restless shifting, no panic stomping, just silence. It wasn't normal. Even a half-broken horse should have reacted to the unfamiliar ride. But this one stood unnaturally still, as if waiting. When he finally pulled into his small farm, the familiar creak of the gates swinging open was met with nothing but the distant chirping of crickets. No one was waiting for him. No ranch hands, no family. Just the empty field stretching toward the tree line, golden, a last light of day. He'd built this place with his own hands, every fence post, every worn-out barn door. It wasn't much, but it was his. And now, it had a new resident. He stepped out of the truck and opened the trailer, expecting resistance. But the horse didn't hesitate. It took a single step forward, then another, walking down the ramp without any sign of fear. The moment its hooves touched the dirt, it stopped. The farmer watched, waiting for some sign of nerves or exhaustion, but the horse just stood there, ears twitching, staring at something unseen. There was something unsettling about it. Shaking the thought away, he led the horse toward the small paddock near the barn. The other animals watched curiously from a distance, his old mare shifting her weight, the cattle lifting their heads, but none of them approached. Animals could sense things humans couldn't. Up close, the damage was worse than he'd thought. The horse's ribs weren't just visible, they were pronounced, as if it hadn't eaten properly in weeks. Scars crisscrossed its legs, some fresh, others older, healed over in rough, uneven lines. And then there was the wound along its side, the one that had turned everyone away at the auction. It was deep, but not fresh. Someone had tried to stitch it up, but the job had been rushed, careless. Whoever had owned this horse before hadn't treated it with kindness. He let out a slow breath, running a hand over its neck. The muscle beneath was still strong, despite everything. Whatever had happened to this animal, it had survived. That alone was worth something. The farmer left it to settle in, tossing some hay into the trough before heading inside. He was exhausted, but sleep didn't come easy. Something about today gnawed at him, the way no one had wanted the horse, the way it had remained so calm in the trailer, the way the other animals had kept their distance. Long after the house had gone dark, a sound broke the silence outside. A low, deep exhale, like something shifting in the night. The farmer sat up in bed, listening. Then came the sound of hooves slow, steady moving where they shouldn't be. The night was still, the kind of quiet that pressed against the walls of the house and settled deep in the bones. The farmer swung his legs over the side of the bed, listening. The steady rhythm of hooves moved somewhere outside, slow and deliberate. Not the frantic pacing of a nervous horse, not the aimless wandering of an animal left to graze. This was different. Purposeful. He grabbed the lantern from the bedside table, the warm glow flickering to life as he stepped onto the porch. The paddock sat in the moonlight, empty. The gate, which he was sure he had latched, hung slightly open. His stomach tightened. The other animals were pressed against the far end of the barn, huddled together in the shadows. They weren't resting. They were watching. He moved carefully, scanning the darkness for any sign of the horse. Then, near the fence line, he saw it. The silhouette stood still, head lowered slightly, ears flicking toward him as if acknowledging his presence. The farmer took a slow step forward, the lantern's glow stretching across the dirt. That's when he noticed something strange. The wound along the horse's side, the one that had been rough and jagged just hours ago, looked different. The stitches that had been clumsy and uneven were gone. In their place was smooth, undamaged skin, as if the injury had never existed. The farmer blinked, his breath catching in his throat. That wasn't possible. He had seen the wound up close, felt the roughness of the scar tissue beneath his fingers. And yet, now it was gone, like it had never been there at all. The horse took a step toward him, its hooves pressing softly into the dirt. Its dark eyes locked onto his, unblinking, calm in a way that felt unnatural. The farmer's grip tightened on the lantern's handle, a strange unease creeping up his spine. Then, without warning, the horse turned and bolted. It moved faster than any injured animal should have, its muscles coiling with a power that hadn't been there before. The farmer ran after it, his boots kicking up dust, but the horse didn't slow. It weaved through the fields, moving like it knew exactly where it was going, like it had been waiting for this moment. Then, just as suddenly as it had taken off, it stopped, right at the edge of the property. The farmer caught up, breath heavy, but the horse didn't move. It stood staring beyond the fence, out into the darkness of the trees. The night air felt different here, thicker, charged with something unseen. The wind barely stirred the grass, yet the horse's mane lifted slightly, as if touched by something that wasn't there. The farmer followed its gaze, but there was nothing, just the tree line, silent and unmoving. Yet somehow, standing there in the moonlight, he knew he wasn't supposed to be here. And neither was the horse. The wind picked up, a slow, uneasy whisper through the trees. The farmer's breath came heavy, his pulse quick in his ears, but the horse remained still watching, waiting. It wasn't fear that held the animal in place. It was something else. Something deeper. The farmer stepped closer, careful not to startle it, but the horse didn't react. Its ears flicked, its muscles tensed, but its eyes stayed locked on the darkness beyond the fence. Then, without warning, it let out a low, deep exhale. Not a sigh, not a snort, something different. Almost like a signal. A sound carried back from the trees. A faint rustling at first, the kind made by small animals moving through the underbrush. But then it grew. The branches swayed, though there was no wind strong enough to move them. The rustling turned to something heavier, the steady crunch of footsteps where no one should be. The farmer's grip on the lantern tightened. He wasn't a man given to superstition, but something about this moment made the air feel heavier, made the night press in on him. His farm was his home, his land, and nothing should have been out here that he didn't know about. But now, for the first time, he felt like a trespasser on his own property. The horse let out another slow breath, then took a step forward, hooves pressing into the soft dirt. The farmer swallowed hard, his instincts warring between stepping back and standing his ground. Then, from the darkness, something moved. It wasn't a shadow. Shadows didn't shift like that. It was something solid, something just out of reach of the lantern's glow. The trees swayed, but no wind touched the farmer's skin. Then the footsteps stopped. Silence. The kind that made the world feel like it had stopped spinning. The farmer's heart pounded against his ribs. He wanted to speak, to break whatever spell had fallen over the night, but his throat was dry, locked up tight. The horse, still calm, lifted its head slightly, and then just for a second its eyes glowed. Not a reflection, not a trick of the lantern light. A deep, unnatural shine, like embers buried beneath ash. It was gone as quickly as it had appeared, but the farmer had seen it. And as soon as the glow vanished, whatever had been in the trees took another step closer. The fence between them felt like nothing. A useless barrier. The farmer felt it in his bones, whatever was out there. It wasn't kept out by wood and nails. The horse knew it too. It didn't bolt. It didn't panic. It just waited. The farmer forced himself to speak, voice hoarse. "What are you?" The words barely left his mouth before the sound came. Low. Deep. Not human. Something was answering. The sound sent a chill through the farmer's spine. It wasn't the growl of a predator, nor the rustling of wind through the trees. It was something deeper, something ancient, like a voice that had been buried under centuries of earth and was only now rising to the surface. The horse remained still, unshaken, its eyes locked on the darkness. The farmer could feel his own breath quicken, but he forced himself to stand firm. Whatever was out there, it wasn't just passing through. It had been waiting. Then, the movement stopped. The air, thick and heavy only moments before, seemed to ease. The trees swayed gently again, this time with the true rhythm of the night. The presence, whatever it was, began to recede. The farmer couldn't see it leave, but he could feel it. The weight pressing on his chest lifted. The quiet returned to what it should have been. The horse exhaled, slow and measured, then turned away from the fence as if nothing had happened. It walked past the farmer, heading back toward the barn with steady, even steps. The farmer stood there for a long moment, staring into the woods, waiting for something else. But nothing came. The night had moved on, as if none of it had ever happened. Back at the barn, the horse settled into its stall. The other animals, still uneasy, gave it space. The farmer ran a hand over its side, searching for the wound that had vanished, for any trace of what had marked it before. But there was nothing. Just smooth, strong muscle, as if the horse had never been hurt at all. Sleep didn't come easy that night. The farmer lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment in his mind. The horse's strange calmness, the sound from the trees, the glowing eyes. It wasn't natural, but it also wasn't something he could explain away. By morning, the world looked the same as it always had. The sun rose over the fields, the cattle moved in slow, lazy patterns, and the air smelled of hay and damp earth. But something was different. The farmer could feel it. When he stepped outside, he found the horse waiting by the fence. Its posture was relaxed, but its eyes carried something knowing, as if it understood more than it should. He exhaled, shaking his head. He had no answers. Maybe he never would. But he knew one thing, whatever had happened last night. And it wasn't just any animal. The farmer looked at it one last time before heading toward the barn. Maybe he hadn't just bought a horse at that auction. Maybe, without knowing it, he had brought home something far greater. And whatever it was, it had chosen to stay.